Hi guys, welcome to the Real Estate Roundtable podcast. We're back with another episode. This time we'll be talking about how to replace your 9-to-5 income with property. And I'm joined by Reese and Jaden, myself, Jeremiah. Let's get into it. So there's many different strategies that can be used to replace your 9-to-5 income. So we're talking from personal experience as full-time property professionals, and Reese, Jaden, also very successful deal sourcers. So we'll be talking about deal sourcing in this episode, and also service accommodation, BRRs, different types of methods and ways in which you can get into property and also replace your income. So do you mind sharing a bit about the type of success that you've had so far? As deal sourcers.
So I'm a deal sourcer. So I've been doing it for a year, and I can say I've actually successfully replaced my income from my previous job. Albeit my previous job I was self-employed. I was earning between 2 to 3. But again, as I said, I've replaced that income now with property, and I still do what I'm doing. So I'm not sure what kind of situation that you lot may be in, where you're thinking, would I have to sacrifice what I'm also doing or what I love to be full time in property? That's not necessarily the case. It is a struggle to balance both, but having that extra income with property has made a big difference to my life, and it's growing. That's the main thing.
Especially with the cost of living.
Listen, you have to have something.
It's no joke.
You have to have something else. But what do you think about, obviously in your case, because you say you're mostly full time in it, do you think it's possible to mix it with a 9-to-5? Say, obviously I was self-employed, but with a 9-to-5, it's possible.
You know what? I think not at the start, honestly speaking. At the start, you need to put in a lot of groundwork, bro. You need to be on the phone. You need to be at networking events. You need to really be putting pedal to the metal. So at the start, I wouldn't recommend. And that's like with most things. If you want to really build something, you need to go all in on that. You can't divert your attention here. So no doubt, it probably is possible to do it with 9-to-5, but just it's going to take longer. And you might, along the way, give up because you feel like it's not working, but really it's because you're not dedicating the time and focus it requires. So for myself, I was in a situation where I wasn't working a 9-to-5. I'd already left my 9-to-5, and I replaced my income within 8 months sourcing. Right, a lot of the first 4 months was just getting to grips with everything, learning everything, putting the pedal to the metal, like I said, and doing all of the work. And then you start seeing the fruits of your labor. So now I'm in a position where I'm probably 2 times what I was making in my 9-to-5 now on a monthly basis. It doesn't even compare now, and now I have the freedom that I want. And now I could probably work a 9-to-5 in the sense that now I've scaled it to a point where I've actually got a virtual assistant that works for my business. So I've managed to now
more systemized.
It works to a point now where I can systemize it, outsource certain things that I have more time to be here recording a podcast at 2 p.m. during the day. So it's like you can systemize it, but you need to do the work to get to a level first.
What would you say the capacity for earning deal sourcing can be like on a realistic level?
Yeah, on a realistic level. Yeah. On a realistic level, right? I mean, us as deal sourcers know the typical amount you might get for a fee is probably 3K. That is the most typical average amount. Can vary, but that's the typical average amount. You can easily have 10K months. Easily. Last month was my best month, and we had a 10K month. It's very, very, very possible. If you, firstly, I would recommend you need to be tapped in with other people who are doing the same thing as you, who are better than you, because that 10K didn't consist of me doing every deal start to finish myself. I co-source with a lot of other sources. I work with a lot of other people. And you just need to really fill the pipeline. Like me and you was discussing before the podcast started. The month before last month, I had a relatively quiet month. But actually what happened was a lot of those deals that I was working on that month didn't come off until last month.
Carried forward.
Exactly. So once you just build that pipeline up, things will come off. Things will come off.
I mean, for the benefit of this episode, can you just explain very briefly what is deal sourcing?
Yeah, of course. I mean, deal sourcing, I think I was saying to you boys earlier, effectively you're working as a personal shopper for an investor. Whatever deal they're looking for whatever strategy and property they're looking to get into. You are their personalized shop by helping them to find the right opportunity. So you're going to find an opportunity, you're going to package it and present it in a way that is clear and concise, digestible for someone that has no knowledge. Because you have to assume that in most cases, most investors probably don't have the required knowledge, otherwise they may do it themselves. There's obviously other reasons as to why they don't do it themselves. Maybe they just don't have the time, but you just want to be able to present it in a clear, concise way. You want to help facilitate the process of viewing the property, contracts, paperwork. So effectively doing everything up to the point of completion. And obviously that's what you're paid for. So
Sure.
yeah, pretty much.
I like how you likened it to being a personal shopper.
Yeah.
But a lot of people that I come across, they're like, why do you need a deal sourcer? I can do this myself.
Yeah.
So who would a deal sourcer be suitable for?
It's most of the time going to be most suitable for people who are time poor. So this might be someone who actually has a lot of money, but they don't have a lot of time. So you think of maybe like a CEO of a large corporate company. You know, they're making so much money, but they want to start investing their money. And what do people think about when it comes to investing their money? Property is one of the things at the top of the list, right? But if they don't have the time, what can they do? They're stranded. So they look for people like us who can assist them and put the time in. Because as a deal sourcer, that's one thing that I would recommend anyone getting into it to have time. You need to be rich in time. You don't need to be, loaded with cash. You don't really need money to start deal sourcing apart from educating yourself.
Yeah.
If you've got the time, you're a perfect match for someone who doesn't have the time. So either you don't have time or you don't have the knowledge. If they don't have the knowledge, they're going to lean on your expertise in that field.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
It's the same thing, like, again, with any other kind of field, like trading, right? You learn the skill, and obviously you can make your own money, and then obviously you can consult. And I've always likened that deal sourcing also to kind of you're consulting on the job, because essentially you're consulting someone who may not have the knowledge or may not have the time on the best investments for them. So you give them a few options, you consult them which one's the best options based on your knowledge, albeit you're not making a decision for them, you're giving them a chance to have an informed decision based on the information you give them.
So ultimately you're like a consultant or an advisor.
Exactly that.
And a lot of people think, oh, I've watched a quick YouTube video of how to deal source. I'm just going to go out there and make loads of money.
Yeah.
But if you put the money at the forefront, I feel like it takes away from what you're doing. The main thing, first and foremost, is you're providing a service.
Exactly.
And you need to carry through with that service. And do as best of a job delivering that service as possible. And that's when the money comes, right?
1,000%.
But then let's say if I want to start off deal sourcing, let's say I'm like 17, I don't have any experience in property. What skills do I need to become a deal sourcer?
As a deal sourcer, I think you need to have a level of patience. Honestly speaking, Jaden, you'll be able to testify to this.
Season, bro.
Patience,
A lot of patience.
Vital, bro. Because you need to be able to detach emotionally. Because if you're emotionally attached,
therapy.
Boy, if you're emotionally attached to every deal, your head is gonna be crazy. Because there's so many deals that you will have, and they'll get to the final point, and you'll think, you're already seeing the money, you're already thinking about what we're gonna spend it on, and bro, it will fall through. And you have to have thick skin and be ready to charge it to the game, bro. Because this happens. This is the nature of the business.
Exactly.
So you need to be able to emotionally detach. Have a level of patience. Like you said, you can't be thinking about the money. You need to be thinking about refining and perfecting the service you're providing to your client at every step, at every stage. Think about, your reply times, your communication, your branding, you putting up testimonials that will make other people want to work with you. And are you speaking with other sources? Are you friendly? Are you outgoing? All of these things are so important. So I'd say definitely patience, resilience, and you need to have a crazy work ethic, man. I'll be honest. Like you said, it's very low barrier to entry, but that's not to say that anyone can enter and anyone can do successful at it. No, you need to be able to put the graft in. And if you don't expect to see the rewards.
So what you're saying is, if you treat it like a side hustle, you're not going to get very far.
Easy. And even there, like, again, just as property is a big umbrella, deal sourcing is a big umbrella. Because again, we're talking about different strategies we mentioned before. So
what kind of strategies?
So we got the BRR method, so buy, refurbish, refinance. So that would be for investors that have quite a bit of capital, that make the time poor, and they want both the kind of positives of owning a property, but also getting rental yield from the property.
Yeah.
And you also have the ones next to that, like the flips that just want to buy a property and then basically do it up and sell it for profit.
Okay.
Then you got the the kind of lower end, although it does still give you a good amount of profit for cash flow, serviced accommodation, your rent to support living, rent to rents essentially. That's the one where I source a lot of my time. But yeah, like all of these different strategies require different skills. So it's really good, I would say, to focus on one before moving on to the next.
Yeah.
I started off in service accommodation. My first deal was a service accommodation deal. But I went into support living because I already had connections in that space, and it made sense for me to just be in that space. And I made a brand in that space. Later on, I'm looking to get into more kind of BRR flip deals and whatnot. So I'm making a name for myself in that was so I sell these type of deals. But again, it's just stage by stage. But like it's not, can't just do it all at once.
Yeah.
It's just going to be lost. So that's one advice I'd put out there.
Yeah.
Try find the one that works for you, and just because it ain't working in the beginning doesn't mean it's not working for you. You just have to stick to it until you move on. Do you know what I mean? You got to be passionate about the one you're getting into.
Yeah, that's a massive fact. Honestly, I remember when I first started, what was I trying to source? I was trying to source PRRs.
Yeah.
I had no idea about even what a mortgage was, bro. Like all of these terms, like I just heard them, bro. But I'm here trying to
Mortgage, what is that?
Yeah, I mean, I have a mortgage, but I'm here trying to tell an investor, yo, give me £3,000, I'll find it for you.
Yeah.
Quickly, I realized that, yo, this is not it. And I decided, also like yourself, to focus on rent to rents. I think rent to rents is a good starting point for deal sources, as it's pretty much got a wider market of people who have access to it. Less capital is required, so naturally more people can access it. Probably need about 10 grand conservatively to get into rent to rent deal from an investor's point of view. So it's just more attainable for a lot of people, right? So that's where I started. Service accommodation, like Jaden, is where I started at. And again, funnily, through Jaden, I started to open my mind to like social housing. Yeah. Literally, before I talked to Jaden about supported living, social housing, I had no clue what it is. And now I find that's what I'm doing majority of the time now. So eventually you will pivot, you will find your way into different strategies, and it will happen, but start with one thing and commit to it. And put your head down, man.
I'll even just mention that, even like the support living and social housing thing, because this is a kind of a new strategy people are using. It's very big right now. But again, it's also about again, as we pivoted to where the demand was, those will do the same thing. So if you're living in an area where it's very cheap, say if I was living in like up north Lancashire or Newcastle or all those places there, you're in a gold mine full of like cheap properties that you can do stuff with. Whereas in London, there's a really high demand for people that are vulnerable and need a place to stay. And the councils are like, there's not enough housing. There's a housing crisis here in London and surrounding areas. So it made sense for in the area that we're doing. There's a massive demand. You link up with one provider that does this, and you need properties. There's a space there. So again, it's not just about do you know what I mean? Kind of look at what the demand is in your area. Because if you're up north, maybe it's not the same there. Do you know what I mean? So
what is a provider you mentioned?
So a provider there's different types. You've got social housing providers and support living providers. They are different. With support living providers, they house vulnerable people. This could be people with that can't take care of themselves, and they need like 24 hours or some level of assistance, basic social workers living with them so they can live kind of codependently, essentially. With social housing providers, it's basically without this need for assistance, just people that could be refugees or just people that may not have the income to afford the housing, essentially. So it's very similar but different. But there's these providers essentially need homes because, again, even for ourselves, there's a housing crisis right now, especially living in London. So many people moving out of London, but they need to be where they need to be. So what me and Reese do, we find these properties for these providers, and we charge a fee, and it just keeps going and going and going. And it's a very good way to keep your clients and keep moving forward.
Okay, so in terms of service accommodation, you can either let it out on short-term lets
Yeah.
and market via like Airbnb, Booking.com, these kind of websites.
Yeah.
Or you could essentially be the middleman
Yeah.
and sell a deal to a social housing or supported living provider.
Exactly.
You can use that to house vulnerable people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so there's a few options even within that space.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
So before we move on, do you guys mind sharing your first deal? Like, what was the process like? How much you sold it for as well? But more importantly, how did you look for the deal and the investor, and how did you match them up? So, Reece, do you want to start?
Yeah. My first deal came probably around, it was on the cusp of 6 months after I like began deal sourcing. So again, like that's another thing. Don't expect to start and make your first couple bit of money in the first month, 2 months. Nah, man, this is a slow process. So yeah, man, what had happened was I had found an investor. She had told me what she wanted. She wanted to be a bespoke investor, which meant basically she had paid me money to find what she wanted, because you'll find not all investors are ready to make that commitment. They might just tell you willy-nilly, oh yeah, I want this in this area, and if you get it, then you know. But some investors are like, listen, I want this. Here's a £500 deposit. Please help me to find it in 4 to 6 weeks. So she was one of those bespoke investors. Funnily enough, I found her different opportunities, a couple that she really liked, but things that fell through. And I was actually getting towards the end of the time period which she had set me to find her a deal. Now, obviously, fortunately, through just building a natural relationship with her, she kind of just gave me some grace. Like, we reached the end of our period, but she gave me some grace. She said, listen, Reece, have another week. I do really want this property. I really like you, and I hope that we can find something together. And then literally within that same week, first deal came off. It was a co-sourced deal.
Yeah.
So it was with someone else that I had met through a networking event. She had the property and my investor loved it. It was in Reading. It was a 2-bedroom house. She still has it today. Cash flows probably about £800 to £1,000 a month. And she's still my investor to this day. I literally helped her to actually offload one of our other essays just the other day. So we still work together, we're still in touch, and yeah, that was my first deal. Now all the way back in January. Yeah. Since January till now, God knows how many I've sold. I couldn't actually tell you. It's definitely like probably 20 plus now.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, that was the first one, honestly.
Amazing. Jada?
My first deal, so very similar to Reece. Mine came in quite early, about 2 to 3 months in. It was a SA deal, which was co-deal sourced with someone, and yeah, what can I say? That one, I would say I wouldn't use it as an example because it was just luck. Because the next deal after that, it took me 4 to 5 months to get the next deal, and that next deal after that one was a support living deal, and I'll talk about that because that one was really hard. It took about. Again, she was a bespoke client, and it was in an area that was very, 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 very difficult. And yeah, so that took a long time to get that one. Again, it's just perseverance, connections, and again, I met someone that again a networking event.
Yeah,
and it's all about people, and they had.
There's a little theme going on here.
Yeah, honestly,
it's just more about connections who you're meeting,
and whatnot. And that's how it came. And from then onwards, it just piles up because and the reason why you're thinking, how does it go from 1 to 20 or 1 to 10 or 1 to 15 so quickly? It's just reputation, because once you get the first deal, your reputation builds up, and just use your social media to post. I found that when I did post, I had a deal with someone, or I did this deal with someone, I post it, I do get some DMs and whatnot, or people my name, or people know, this person does this. People are watching, even if they don't message you.
That's true.
People are watching, so they know who you are and what you do, and that always will snowball into something big in the end.
I mean, it's interesting because one thing that you mentioned at the start was it was luck, and I feel like in business, like if you're working hard, if you're grinding, I feel like opportunities just come to you sometimes. If you're taking action, there's a repercussion to that action, isn't it?
Yeah, facts.
So it may seem like luck, but if you're making moves, then it'll come back to you somehow.
Yeah.
And obviously sometimes it does take longer, but it's all about taking action. That's what I tell people as well. Like if you want to go into deal sourcing or work in real estate, whatever you're doing, you need to take action and be consistent with it, and then results will follow.
That's right.
100%.
That's right.
100%. Just to touch on something Jaden said as well about almost like proof of concept idea with like posting, it validates yourself to investors. You know, so many people that start off deal sourcing, they're like, oh, but I'm struggling to find investors. And obviously, we're fortunate that we're in a position that we have proof to post, if that makes sense. Like we have testimonials because we've done deals. But what do you do when you haven't done a deal yet? You know, how do you provide that proof of concept? The way to provide that proof of concept when you haven't done anything is to, regardless, keep putting yourself out there. You've got knowledge. Like, don't think just because you haven't done a deal, you've still got the knowledge that anyone that's done a deal has as well.
Yeah.
So you need to be able to provide value in the knowledge you're given. Show that you're an expert in this field. And that will make people feel like, cool, I can give this guy the benefit of doubt. Yeah, he hasn't done anything, but look how enthusiastic he is about what he's learned. Look at his knowledge. Look how in depth he knows what he's doing. This guy will go to the end of the world for you. You can see it. So that's what you need to be able to do.
Yeah, 100%. So it's all about showing your determination, right? And I feel like a lot of deal sources just come off way too strong, like try and force their deals down someone's throat. But look, if you're at a networking event, I think the best thing to do is just ask questions, get to know someone, and get to know what they're looking for as well. And in that way, you're actively trying to help someone without trying to pitch your deal and like be too aggressive with it. Because that way, like I've been to many networking events. Obviously, I mainly focus on luxury real estate now, but I still meet people that are interested in investing in service accommodation deals or looking for BRR deals, flips, that sort of thing. And that's just by me asking them questions. Like, what brings you here? What are you looking for? What are your goals? Short term, long term, whatever. So I can go on my contacts, and I'm sure it's the same for you.
Exactly.
Like, we can find investors now. And even if we don't have investors, let's say, we still have people that we can co-source with. So
what's co-sourcing though? You said this a few times. Maybe they don't know what co-sourcing is.
Yeah, that's true.
Co-sourcing is the way forward. If you wanna get to a place where people say, "Oh, how would you sell 3 deals in 1 month?" Because I've recently done something like that. I sold 3 deals. My goal was to get 5 deals in 1 month. Right now I'm on 3 deals in 1 month. And the way you do that is essentially by co-sourcing. It's the only way, because you're divvying up the workload, because there'll be another sourcer who could be direct to a property or a deal, and you just have the client, or the other way around. And they can take care of the load, and whilst you could be focusing on your one and another one, and that's the way you can just keep doing it. The best thing I could say for every successful sourcer is to attract investors. Once you have the investors, there's a deal there, right? There's a deal there. You can have 5 clients, and if they paid money all to you, at the end of it, you're going to find that property. Because finding property I would say, is pretty easy, especially with code. There is someone that's going to have the property you want, essentially. So, like, by having the clients and having that brand and of trust, and you take them on a journey and find that property, making it as easy and stress-free as possible, they're going to keep coming, and that's the way forward. Just get clients first, get investors first. That's what separated me from a lot of sources, I think, definitely.
So coming back to the main point, how to replace your 9-to-5 income with property. Obviously, Reese, you mentioned like a typical deal is around $3,000. But if you could rate how easy or difficult it is to become a deal sourcer and replace your income on a scale of like 0 to 10, what would you rate it?
See, my answer is from my perspective, knowing my work ethic. So from my perspective, I think it's probably no less than a 7, maybe a 7.5. I was going
to say 7.
It's no less than a 7.
I feel
you can't say 7, guys. You can't say 7.
And the reason...
I say 7.5. 7.5
Okay.
still. Yeah, that's my opinion. What do you think?
100% 7, because the reason being is, it's the first year. It's the first few months. Your first deal, that's the grind.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And and it is a numbers game. Once you just do the little things every day, like how many networking events do you go to? What's going on?
I'm going to one later today.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Networking event. If you just do these simple things, make it part of your. It will snowball. That's what all I can explain it as. It will just eventually snowball, and that's the hard part. And when you don't have that first deal, it gets a bit like, scary, where it's like, is this actually going to work? But once you go through that, the general business of deal sourcing is quite simple and straightforward. It does have its issues, but it is very straightforward in terms of deal, investor, middleman, here, these sort. It's once you got that skill, and this is why I also say, even if you're not interested in deal sourcing, you want to become an investor first. I would say be a deal sourcer first, because now even for me now when I'm getting into the projects I'm getting into, because I have the knowledge now. I know how to
do the numbers, work out the
I
figures
know what's good. So
and
if a person, or if I choose to go to another source and be like, all right, I can look at what he's saying. That's not right. Do you know what I mean? So
numbers a bit inflated there.
Yeah, like, that's not conservative. Do you know what I mean?
Across that.
So so definitely, if you want to become an investor, a great investor, start with deal sourcing.
That's why honestly it was a no-brainer when starting out with property. You can go straight into rent to rent. You can go straight into like raising capital and buying. There's so many other things, but I knew deals wasn't what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Because there's so many benefits. You meet all of the relevant kind of stakeholders in property, whether that's estate agents, landlords, other sources, investors as well.
Building your contacts.
Building your contacts list, bro. You're being able to learn how to communicate with all types of people. A lot of people before they start deal sourcing are young, so they've never even had to be able to speak well. Do you know what I mean? Like hold themselves well and walk into an estate agent. But I used to just bop into estate agents, no meeting, no appointment. Let me speak to the director, please. And be able to have to carry myself well to the point where a director will actually take me seriously. There's so many things you learn. You grow as a person when deal sourcing, bro. So honestly, I couldn't recommend it enough.
Nice. But then how realistic is it to sell one deal or like 2 deals co-sourcing and replace your income? Like
3K is the typical annual salary in the UK, isn't it? Like outside of deal sourcing.
No,
how much is it?
I think it's around 2 grand.
It's around 2 grand.
So it's even less.
Or maybe less than that.
Crazy.
It's
somewhere
the
around
average is between 1.8 and you're looking between 30 to, depends on the age, but for people our age, it's like 25 to 30. And then people to annually, and then for people going across from the 30s to 40s, it's like 40 to 45.
So basically, it's low.
It's less than 3 grand a month, basically.
Less than 3 grand.
Less than 3 grand. Much less than 3 grand.
Wow.
But then, how realistic is it?
Bro, it's very realistic. Like Jeremiah said, it's like anything, right? There's the start phase where it's like, cool, you've got uninformed optimism. There's this graph, like you've probably seen it, where you've got the start bit where it's like uninformed optimism, right? You go to a course or whatnot, or networking event, and you hear, oh yeah, you can make up to 10 grand a month deal sourcing. All you have to do is find an investor, find a deal.
We've all seen those YouTube videos.
Do you know what I'm saying? At that point, you're
makes
uninformed.
it so simple and easy.
It sounds so simple, it sounds perfect. But at that point, you're uninformed, but you have the optimism. Then you start taking action. Then you have the feeling of, oh, rah, this is way harder than I thought. Do you know what I mean? So now you've got informed pessimism because you're at this stage where it's like, cool, I'm working every day, I'm doing things, but nothing's moving the needle here. But if you get past that phase, and you get the first
persistence,
deal,
push through.
When one hits, the momentum stays with you, bro. So that's why I say it is realistic, like very realistic, bro. It's not rocket science, like Jaden said at all.
Nice one. So that was our episode on deal sourcing and deal sourcing as a way to replace your 9 to 5. We got the verdict from the guys, a 7 out of 10.
7 out of 10.
So, of course, it has its difficulties, but if you persist, if you put the time into it, that's the main thing, right? You need some time and effort that you put into it, and also knowledge and skills as well. Then you can go far in deal sourcing. In the next episode, we'll be talking about service accommodation, more so owning your own rent-to-service accommodation, and how you can replace your income using that. See you in the next one.
Peace.